strategy number 4. During the shutdown, many doctors we've talked to, some are attempting to keep their staff working. Others, have furloughed. There's been a whole wide range. Some practices, like I said at the beginning, are literally unaffected by what's going on right now. I've talked to a few implant practices that are shut down, but are still doing consultations, treatment planning, and collecting money. And their finances are unaffected. Of course, they've got, I talked to a doctor yesterday who only does all-on-4, all-on-6 protocols, and he has 4 months of surgery booked as soon as they reopen. Booked, bought, and paid for. He's already collected. He gave a 5% discount for them to pay cash up front, and it's been a windfall that's carried him through this time, and he's still doing consults. He's doing remote consults. We talked about our virtual smile assessment tool on a past webinar, and I'm going to show you again tonight in our Survive and Thrive guide. This is a critical time to level up your people. Let me give you some data from 2008. When we went through this recession in 2008, there were 2 kinds of doctors that we saw. There were the ones that went into this and they got froze up and they didn't do anything. And then when they came out and they either reopened their practice or things started to pick up a little bit, they had no plans in place. They had laid off some of their team. They had slashed their expenses. They had holes in their schedule. And now they're standing around looking at each other. They got nothing to do. There were other guys that made the same slashes, the same trims, because we all have to weather the storm together. But they were strategic and they put into place training and systems and processes during the slow time so that when they came out of this slump, they could slingshot right back out. Now, this may sound like some big story I'm telling you, but let me show you the data. Our data from 2008 is the doctors that prepared and put in the time to train their team, revise their systems to prepare for the future, right? Like Seth Godin says, everything's going to be okay. It's just going to be different. You got to prepare for what that different is. Practices that prepared rebounded very, very quickly within 1 to 3 months. Practices that did not prepare in the 2008 recession, they had 38% lower collections for 6 to 9 months following the rebound. And that's the numbers. That is the difference between preparing or just winging it, and then you get into it and you're going to make the exact same changes anyway. You're just going to do it the hard way. And the school of hard knocks is a hard school. Doing it in advance and preparing is a lot easier way, and you're going to make a lot more money that way. Getting your team into this workbook. This is the workbook I promised you right here. Download this workbook. Sit down with your team. Email it to them. Ask them to look through it and review it. If you want to get more stuff around Success Academy, I'm going to show you some more tools around that here in just a bit. This workbook will allow you to kind of audit your practice, and you decide where you need to apply time and training and resources. It'll give you the tools you need to do that. It'll teach you all about the 5 A's. How many calls you've answered, how many calls get scheduled, how many appointments show up, how many attend, and then the average case or patient value that comes out of it. And a 10% increase on each of those will double your collections. 10% is a very small number. It's very easy to make a 20% increase, especially if there's 1 or 2 metrics that your practice isn't doing as well on. And that's pretty common. You might have a great team that's dedicated and answering all the calls, and they're appointing patients, but there's just a couple things missing because you got an 82% attendance rate, or you got a 15% cancellation rate or no-show rate. There's something happening that's just a little off, and this thing's a waterfall, right? If we can bump each stage 10%, we get a huge output at the bottom of the funnel. So that is the key. It's looking at each stage and the strategies, and supporting your team in implementing this. This isn't management by spreadsheets. I've seen plenty of consultants that like to map out spreadsheets and, oh, you just got to go do it. If Susie just answered the damn phone, everything would be great. Well, it's not that easy. Susie's up front. She's trying to answer the phone. She's getting pulled into the back. She's checking out patients. She's checking in patients. The phone rings, 2 people at the same time. And all of a sudden, you're answering 60% of the new patient calls that come into your practice. I see it happen day in and day out, and it's not her fault, and it's not your fault either. It's just the way it is. And we can change that. You can change that. And this workbook is going to start to help you to identify where these holes are in your practice so you can do that. Remember what I talked about at the beginning. The eyes only see and the ears only hear what the mind is looking for. When I tell doctors that they have a 60% answer rate, the number of doctors that have believed me rounds to 0. None of them ever believe me when I tell them that. And then I say, hey, well, okay, I understand. Help me understand. Here's the data. We tracked all the calls coming into your practice last month, and here's the data report. Help me understand this. And as we get into it, it's because the eyes only see and the ears only hear what the mind is looking for. And their mind told them that, oh, my front staff, they've been certified. They've been through training. They know all the best strategies and tactics. Well, if that was the case, why do you only have 10% of your new patients coming from referrals? If that's the case, why is only 50% of the patients that call getting appointed? All of these are signs and symptoms, but oftentimes we ignore the symptoms because the mind isn't looking for them. We want to have certainty that everything's okay when in fact we're lacking clarity on what's really happening. And that's a very important distinction to make. We got to open our eyes up and shine the flashlights around and find the problems in our practice. We all have cockroaches in our businesses. We got to find them and exterminate them. This workbook will help get you on that path.